Disney. Lilo and Stitch. Adapted by Catherine Hopka. In a distant remote corner of the galaxy, Jumba Jookiba created Experiment 626, a new species. The Grand Councilwoman of the planet ordered Jumba to get rid of Experiment 626. Just as they were about to escort 626 off to a far asteroid, he broke out. Back at the Galactic Federation headquarters, they tracked 626 as he hurtled toward an unfamiliar part of the galaxy. A control operator pinpointed 626's destination, a planet called Earth. Jumba and his friend Pleakley followed 626 to Earth. Off the small island of Kauai, a young girl named Lilo swam in the rolling waves. When she realized she was late for hula dance class, Lilo dashed from the ocean and tried unsuccessfully to slip into class unnoticed. Her teacher wanted to know why she was all wet.
"It's Thursday. Every Thursday I take Pudge the fish a sandwich,"
Lilo said. The other students rolled their eyes. One girl, Myrtle, called Lilo crazy. Lilo lunged at Myrtle, but the teacher caught her. After class, Lilo forgot to wait for her older sister Nani and walked home. Not finding Lilo at the hula school, Nani rushed home to find her little sister had locked herself inside. Cobra Bubbles, a social worker, arrived at their house in time to see Nani breaking into her own home. He was evaluating Nani as a guardian for Lilo. Lilo put on her best smile and recited the answers she and Nani had practiced. Cobra gave Lilo his business card. "Call me next time you're left here alone." After Cobra left, Nani and Lilo got into a big fight. Later that night, Nani went to Lilo's bedroom to check on her. "We're a broken family, aren't we?" Lilo asked. "No, maybe a little. I'll tell you what. If you promise not to fight anymore, I promise not to yell at you," Nani said. After Nani said goodnight, Lilo saw a shooting star and ran to make a wish. "I need someone to be my friend. Maybe send me an angel. The nicest angel you have," Lilo wished. Hearing Lilo's wish, Nani thought maybe Lilo could use a playmate. Lilo didn't know the shooting star was actually 626's spaceship, crash-landing in a field of sugarcane. Next thing he knew, 626 was waking up in a kennel. Just then, Lilo and Nani entered the kennel to pick out a pet. Lilo chose 626. Nani was shocked. "What is that thing? Does it have to be that dog?"
"Yes, he's good. I can tell. His name is Stitch,"
Lilo said.
"Can I buy him?"
Nani agreed and gave Lilo $2. As Lilo and Stitch left the kennel together, Jumba leapt out to capture 626, but Pleakley stopped him, reminding him they were on Earth. They couldn't use their alien technology or make themselves known. Lilo eagerly introduced Stitch to his new home.
"This is a great home. You'll like it a lot,"
Lilo said. But Stitch proceeded to destroy everything in his path. Lilo objected when Nani disciplined Stitch. Nani wanted to take Stitch back to the kennel.
"He was an orphan and we adopted him," Lilo said. "What about Ohana? Ohana means family. Family means nobody gets left behind."
"Or forgotten," Nani finished. Lilo took Stitch up to her room. Stitch found a book about an ugly duckling. He was curious about it. Lilo explained that in the end, the duckling was happy because he knew where he belonged. The next day, Nani dragged Lilo and Stitch around with her as she went on job interviews. Lilo used the time to teach Stitch about her hero, Elvis. She told him that Elvis was a model citizen, so he should practice being like Elvis. Stitch got started right away, dancing and playing guitar, and he disrupted every interview. When the day drew to a close, Nani still had not gotten a job. Lilo and Stitch were sitting quietly on the beach when Nani's friend David walked up. "Hey, Lilo. Hi, Nani. How are you guys?"
"We've been having a bad day," Lilo said.
"Well, there's no better cure for a bad day than a couple of boards and some choice waves. What do you think?" Nani agreed, and they all joined David in the sparkling water. Despite his dislike of water, Stitch became captivated by the sport, and when they returned to shore, he dragged over a board asking for another ride. As Lilo, Stitch, and Nani headed back out to the water, Jumba saw an opportunity to catch Stitch. While they surfed, Jumba swam up from underneath. The white water of the crashing waves hid Jumba as he pulled Stitch beneath the surface. He swam away from Jumba's grip, but floundered in the waves. Fortunately, David was nearby and rescued Stitch. Cobra had seen the whole incident and was very upset with Nani. Defeated, Nani took Lilo and Stitch home. Stitch felt guilty and hurt. He took the ugly duckling book and started walking toward the window.
"Ohana means family. Family means nobody gets left behind. But if you want to leave, you can. I'll remember you, though,"
Lilo said as Stitch climbed outside. He walked deep into the forest, desperately hoping to find his own family. The next morning, Jumba and Pleakley were back to their search for Stitch. Jumba caught up to him in the middle of the forest. Stitch told Jumba he was waiting for his family. "You don't have one. I made you," Jumba said. Back at the house, Lilo told Nani about Stitch.
"He left. He didn't want to be here anyway."
Nani began to console Lilo, but David arrived to announce that he had found a job for Nani. After Nani left, Stitch burst through the door. Pleakley and Jumba were not far behind. Lilo called Cobra to tell him that aliens were attacking her house. Jumba was making a mess trying to capture Stitch. Nani returned to the house to find Cobra already there. When he saw what Stitch and Jumba had done to the house, he tried to take Lilo away. While Nani and Cobra argued, Lilo slipped out and ran into the forest. She ran as fast as she could, trying to get as far away as she could. Stitch popped up in her path. He revealed his true alien self to her. "You're one of them?" she said. Without warning, another alien named Gantu snatched up both Lilo and Stitch. Nani arrived just in time to see Gantu load them onto his ship. Stitch worked his way out of the containment pod and fell from the ship as it took off with Lilo still trapped inside. Jumba and Pleakley jumped out and contained Stitch. Nani went to confront all three of them. "Where's Lilo? Bring her back!" Nani shouted. Stitch shuffled over to Nani and spoke the words Lilo had taught him. "Ohana means family. Family means nobody gets left behind. Or forgotten," Nani finished. Everyone piled into Jumba and Pleakley's spaceship. Once in the air, Jumba used his ship to bump Gantu's and sent it spinning. Jumba then blasted Stitch onto Gantu's ship. He crashed through the windshield and rescued Lilo. "You came back!" she cried. "Nobody gets left behind," Stitch said. Moments later, the ship splashed into the ocean. David, who was surfing nearby, helped them ashore, where they were met by Cobra and a fleet of aliens, including the Grand Councilwoman. The Grand Councilwoman wanted to take Stitch back to their home planet. Cobra stepped in. "Lilo, didn't you buy that thing at the shelter?" he asked. Lilo nodded. She approached the Grand Councilwoman, who decided to let Stitch stay with Lilo and Nani on Earth. Nani, Lilo, and Stitch were a real family. The spirit of Ohana proved that anyone could belong. Disney, Moana, Pua and Heihei. Written by Suzanne Francis. The feast to welcome spring was about to start. Moana and Grandma Tala were busy collecting shells. Moana's pet pig Pua tried to help, but the shells he found were never empty. Moana was making her father a surprise gift for the feast, an anklet. Moana strung a final shell onto the anklet, finishing it. Just then, Heihei, the foolish village rooster, ran by them wearing a part of a coconut on his head. "Silly Heihei," Moana said, removing the coconut. Heihei turned and started pecking at Grandma's feet. "You've no more brains than a grain of sand," said Grandma, shooing him away. But he just started pecking the sand instead. In the village, preparations for the feast had begun. While everyone was hard at work, Heihei just got in the way. Men were busy building the umu, an underground oven. They piled up pieces of wood, dried husks, and coconut shells. After they started the fire, they added rocks. It wasn't long before the umu was hot enough to roast bananas, fish, and taro roots. Heihei walked onto the hot rocks. "You'll set yourself on fire, you silly bird!" one man yelled, chasing him away. Heihei ran away and stepped on a partially finished platter woven from pandan leaves. His tiny foot got trapped, but he didn't even notice as he dragged the large platter behind him. Grandma Tala tried to catch him, but as she reached for him, she slipped on the platter. Fortunately, Moana was there to catch her. In all the commotion, neither of them noticed that Moana had dropped the anklet. It landed around Heihei's neck, and he dashed away. "That is it," Grandma Tala said. She wasn't giving up. She grabbed a hand-woven leaf basket and, in one fell swoop, trapped Heihei and cinched the basket shut. He hadn't seen her coming. He was too busy pecking at a rock. But Grandma had been so focused on catching the rooster that she hadn't seen the anklet around his neck. But Moana had just realized the anklet was missing. "Oh no!" she said. Just then, Pua spotted the basket. He saw Heihei's beak sticking out between the gaps in the woven leaves. When he looked closer, Pua noticed the anklet around the rooster's neck. He was determined to retrieve it for Moana. But first, Pua had to open the basket. He rolled it over and over, but that didn't work. Then, Pua put the basket on top of a stick. He jumped on the stick and sent the basket flying. It fell to the ground, but was still tightly shut. He had to think of another idea. On the ground, Pua saw a long vine. He picked it up and trotted back to the basket. Pua looped the vine around the basket and dragged it along, running as fast as he could. Heihei's legs slipped out, and he ran to keep up. Pua pulled the basket past some villagers. Because Heihei had continued to peck and peck, his head stuck out through another hole he'd made. They passed a man cutting breadfruit. When he sliced it in half, a tasty chunk flew right into Heihei's mouth. When Pua heard music, he knew the feast was about to begin. He dragged the basket toward a slender tree and tossed it onto a branch. Then he jumped up after it. Pua bounced on the branch, and Heihei's basket flew into the air and then back down to the branch. The higher Pua bounced, the higher the basket flew. Finally, Pua bounced so high that the branch flung the basket straight into him. The two animals soared through the air. Pua and Heihei squealed and clucked with glee. When they hit the ground, the basket finally opened. Pua was thrilled. He could get the anklet to Moana. But they rolled right into a large fishing net. And they tumbled right up to Moana. Moana untangled them and gasped when she saw the anklet around Pua's snout. "You found it," she said, giving him a big hug. Later that evening, Moana gave Chief Tui the anklet. "I love it," he said. As Moana and her father hugged, Pua heard a strange sound. It was Heihei. He couldn't cluck because his beak was buried in a piece of driftwood. And he'd gotten tangled up in pieces of the basket again. Fortunately, Pua was ready to help him again.